Welcome to Behind the Build. I am your host, Jonathan Jacobs, and today I have with me a gentleman whose practice has won the Emerging Practice Award. Is that right?
Yeah, in Canadian Architect years ago.
Well, that's not nothing. That's something. I have with me today, I have Kfir Gluzberg of Kilogram Studios. Kaplan's Appliances has been a staple in the city of Toronto for over 80 years. I've told you how it's a generational business, currently in its third generation of operation. A pretty special feat when you think about how many businesses come and go over the course of decades. And that's largely due to the fact that their main ambition is service. Anyone could offer the sale of appliances, but in order to be able to properly service people, well, that's where you set yourself apart. I used Kaplan's, obviously, for my own home. I finished a renovation a couple of years ago, and one of the key elements in making the decision for our appliances was that we wanted to get something that was going to have induction as a cooktop. We wanted that because of speed. With young children coming through the door at the end of the day, they generally can get hangry. So to avoid that, if you were in a pinch and you needed to let's say, boil some craft dinner for the kids, because not every night is a gourmet meal, if we're going to be honest with each other, you can go from the point of them walking through the door to them sitting down and eating within 10 minutes. Water's boiled, the noodles are ready, you throw in the powder, a little bit of milk and butter, and next thing you know, your children are eating and you've avoided the hangriness. Kaplan's has actually been supplying induction cooktops for over 20 years. And to my knowledge, it's actually largely where the entire industry is going to shift. A lot of people don't want gas in their house anymore. If you don't know much about induction, I would highly recommend reaching out. You can email me and I can set you up with an in-house appointment with them where you can actually watch one of the chefs prepare a meal for you at the store on an induction cooktop to see for yourself how incredibly efficient it is. My email address is jonathan, Jonathan, @waldenhomes.ca. I look forward to hearing from you. And now, I want to tell you about a window and door supplier we've been working with for the last number of years. The company is called The Doors. They're a European window and door supplier introduced to us by Eisen Architecture, and we have subsequently partnered on a number of projects with The Doors supplying their product alongside Eisen Architecture and us on a number of projects, which is now kind of filtered over into some other projects where they've installed incredible curved glass and curtain wall with Drew Mandel architects on a project with us, as well as SMPL Design Studio. I have the product installed here in my own house, and my youngest daughter, who is under the age of 8, is able to open the door at the back of our house, and it's a 16 by 8 slider. So one fixed panel that's an 8 by 8 and one sliding door that's an 8 by 8. And my 7-year-old has no issue opening the door up and sliding it. When you think about what it weighs, you would expect that she would not be able to do it, but you can. I say this because if you're installing windows and doors in a home or in a commercial project, whether it's a gallery or a restaurant, the concept of being able to have something that can function well but also hit all of your R values with a profile that meets the requirements of the architecture is an important detail to be able to hit. The R values you get out of the product can either meet or be slightly below Passive House, which is amazing. And in addition to that, we have never run into a production issue where the product shows up late to a site. If anything, we've actually had it show up early and they've had to store it. And the beautiful thing about all of this is that Martin and Marta, his wife, are involved in all facets of the business. Martin's there from the point of sale through to the installation, through to service, and the product is readily available through all of North America. If you're interested in learning more about it, I would be happy to introduce you to them. We asked them to be a part of this podcast because of the way they service our clients and the way that they manage their business. To set up an introduction, feel free to email me. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca. Kfir, thanks for coming to my house and saying yes to this whole thing.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so happy that you make this podcast and that you invited me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Kfir and I connected a month ago or so ago. Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah, ish. All right, I like that. And I, as I have with many of you that are listening and others that are potentially upcoming, reached out and said, can we talk about your studio on the podcast? And he said, yeah, sure. So here he sits. And I'd like to start off as I do with everyone. I want to know, what is your early inspiration? What drew you into a life of architecture?
Architecture was not the first thing I thought of.
Okay.
I was...
Your first thought was not architecture. I like this.
Right out of the womb.
Architecture!
No, I mean, it's that crunch in high school where you feel like you have to decide what you're doing with the rest of your life. And it is a weird time in your life where really that you can set a track like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my head was in advertising and art. Those were kind of two things, probably more leaning towards art, but architecture felt like it was bigger and included everything under it. It seemed like if I could do that, then I can choose from any path under it. And I'd say that today I still think about different things, shifting things under that umbrella. So I'm happy. I'm happy with the choice.
Okay, so in school, were you taking lots of art courses?
Not
early on, like beyond elementary school, say middle school and high school.
Yeah, I was drawing a lot, and it wasn't just like visual, two-dimensional art. It was all sorts of craft projects, and I was definitely artsy in high school.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, also doing like drama, all the kind of like creative stuff.
Man, drama was like some of the best hours of high school are in drama.
It was, my school did not have a drama program, so I did lots of things outside of school that were the creative things, like painting, but also, theater. And
when you drew, were you, I've asked this to a few people, were you a pencil drawer or were you a pen or fine line marker drawer?
In high school, it was charcoal.
Oh.
I was drawing a lot in charcoal and pencil.
Okay.
And acrylic paint.
Okay.
And today it's all pencil.
Yeah.
And it's all mechanical pencil. So not even dealing with different kinds of lines much.
Okay. And so what state, like, were you in high school when you were saying to yourself, as you had kind of mentioned and alluded to before, that you were saying like, okay, this is a path I will consider? And did you go to university for architecture, or what did that look like?
Yeah. So I applied to 3 programs that are architecture. I had a preference for one. I went to Waterloo. What's so special about Waterloo are the co-op placements. So you're working throughout your degree, you're helping to pay for things, you're able to find work in different cities. And the other part is the history component, which I didn't really appreciate before I went there, where every year you're learning a different kind of like time period. And you get this you get a well-rounded architecture education, but you don't get much freedom to select any courses, almost at all, like very few.
Which you enjoy or not?
No, I was happy with the program. I loved it. And when I came to the end of my undergrad, I really desperately wanted to leave. Okay. It was too much of a structure. It was like, I get this. I loved it. I need to see something else.
Okay. So what did that look like? What did you do?
It looked like 2 years of leaving school and living in New York.
Okay.
And working freelance for 2 different architects.
Okay.
Which was sort of a first taste of self-employment, and really loved that experience. But
what types of projects were you working on for them?
One of them, they were both residential, actually.
Okay.
So they were...
Single family?
High-end interior renovations, single family, which is what is being built in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And what I think is a lot of what's happening in Toronto, which is a kind of real estate question. There are fewer and fewer ground-up projects in a city that's well built.
Yeah.
So I'm not a stranger to it. It's a lot of millwork, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're the first person to say that. It's a lot of millwork.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's accurate. Just very few people describe it as that because, ultimately that's what it is. You need to store a lot of things inside these homes.
Absolutely. You still play a lot with materials and light and finishes.
Yeah.
And there's the odd addition or piece of building. But yeah, it's a lot of interior architecture, if you will.
And so when you were there, because you were on contract for them, were you still involved in like going to sites, doing your site reviews, and like did you get all your experience doing that there, or did you have the opportunity to work on that again further that experience here?
Yeah. So that felt like a hiatus.
Okay.
And in the 2008 crash, my bank went under immediately. That was Washington Mutual. And it was like a sign of, okay, I should probably go back to grad school, which is what I need to become a licensed architect. So I spent 2 years doing school in Barcelona. That was a program that was a lot of, it was almost like doing arts and crafts, but with digital tools. So robotics.
Yeah. What was the school?
It's called IAAC,
okay.
Institute of Advanced Architecture of Catalonia. And it's a post-grad degree. So I did it backwards. I did that first. And then I did the graduate degree at McGill, which was another 1-year program they offered at the time.
Okay.
McGill was great because I loved Montreal and because I had great visiting profs. Went to go visit an asbestos mine, got to do really unusual projects there too. And then I started my experience hours in Toronto.
I got to tell you, it's an interesting path. For a person that was done with school, you found your way back into school.
We're forced to.
Yeah.
If I could have been done forever, I would have.
Okay.
And we have to for the license. And I'm not upset about what I did. I loved those 2 years were a lot of fun. And they set me on track for where I am today. And
what an experience to be able to go to Barcelona, right? And then to Montreal, like these beautiful cities, to be able to go get that education.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're both cities with a lot of culture, a lot of art and events. And there is a kind of similarity between them of a kind of culture of separatism and the environment that creates. And, that was really interesting to live in. But they also both cities left me with a sense of really strongly being an outsider in a way that as a Torontonian, which is a city that I feel like so quickly absorbs anyone, that felt really foreign and alienating. So I was happy to come back.
You say that there were events and interesting things happening in Barcelona. Were there some specific festivals or events that you had gone to that really like have stuck out through the test of time in your mind about like you miss or you would like to go back and experience again?
It was this feeling of doing something futuristic and visionary in Barcelona. I feel like every party there had projections on every surface and there were sensors hooked up to them and it would interact with the crowd. And I feel like that was just the kind of party there would be. And I don't just mean like a party at a club at night. It would be, something at a gallery or an event at a museum. And that was a testing ground where it's very experimental. That I thought that was like very energetic to be around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and connected. So it's funny. So before we started recording, we were talking about a bunch of different things, and one of those things was talking about Science Center, and they used to have on the ground in like the kid zone, there was a sensor on the ground, and it would rotate through different types of experiences, and one of them was like lily pads and frogs. And I think another one was fish. And I remember like watching the kids run around on the ground and like all these parents just sitting around on different benches watching their kids that could do this for hours because they just felt so connected to the experience.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I feel like you're describing in some way of on the adult scale in some of these places.
I mean, for designers, I think it's like a UX, UI. It's thinking about where technology and our daily lives are seamless and how can you blur that line more and more? And I think like that was what I was doing in my schooling, was thinking about how do I bring digital craft into construction. What building types did we not think about because we didn't have digital fabrication to rely on, or like a history of digital fabrication that was very mature. So yeah, it was energetic. That was the feeling, like testing.
Have you ever considered something like that within a project? And that's an obscure question.
No, I think it's really relevant. It comes up, like a lot of the work that I do is retail interior and commercial interior. And that's actually a space where you can play with those tools because we're fabricating one-off pieces that might have a bigger budget. So yeah, we did do things that required like 5-axis and doubly curved surfaces that really require more attention. But it's always a question of budget, right? And having a client that's open to saying, let's take a risk on building this prototype that we're not quite sure how it's going to perform, but we have a pretty good hunch and it's going to be really cool. So that it's not always the right answer for a project, even though it would be a lot of fun to do every day.
I just feel like it would be so fantastic if there was like an RFP that would go out and it would just say budgetless.
It's called a competition. I think that's the purpose of design competitions, is to be able to come to people and say, like, let's give you the tools to push a design so that we can make a decision based on something, a vision, and you can always catch up with reality.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so you go ahead, you finish Barcelona, you finish McGill. You've got your master's.
Right.
At this point.
Yes. I had it under my belt and I emigrated to Israel.
And you left. You're like, all right, now time to flee.
That was a very long-term plan. I had always intended to do it. And the rest of my family already did it.
So we didn't get there as to why. Okay, so originally, you're from Toronto or not?
So yeah, I emigrated when I was 5.
Yes.
Grew up in suburban Toronto.
Okay.
So Thornhill and then North York.
Yep.
I'm not nostalgic about the suburbs. I didn't like it growing up, and I still don't like the way that the zoning created that kind of community.
Yeah.
And over the years, my siblings moved back to Israel, and my parents are half there, half here.
Yep.
And it was my intention to go back there. And the architecture scene there is really interesting. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening.
Yeah.
So I was happy to do it when I finished my graduate degree and got the job that I wanted. And
which
had a great experience there. It was an office in Tel Aviv called Efrat Kowalsky. They designed the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and they have really a beautiful set of projects. They're also a very small practice. One of them was the director of the Bezalel School of Architecture in Jerusalem. So I had a great time working with them. But I had met my partner in Canada before I made the move, and we stayed together. And
how long were you away for? How long were you in Tel Aviv?
Almost a year.
Okay.
Yeah. So not a ton, but I ended up coming back and building a life here. And here we are.
There was a book. Oh, it's a kid's book. I've read it to my daughters about the string. Do you know this book? Something along the lines of like, the love you have is connected by a string, and the string can extend, but it likes to be close. Something along those lines. And so the idea of like, it had extended, but it was time to come back.
Yeah, it's funny that right around that time period, that same year while I was there, my friend and I, who's an architect, we were in school together and roommates. We did a project about our immigration experience as something that's ongoing. You never actually stop immigrating because you're always tied to that string in some way. Yeah. And it was part of the Venice Biennale Canadian Pavilion in 2012, which 5468796, the architecture practice in Winnipeg, designed that year through a competition process. So we did this installation of it. It was a kind of chair that folded up to turn into a suitcase. So anytime You arrive in a place, you open your suitcase, and you sit and become part of the landscape, and then you fold it back up and keep moving.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. That was a great trip.
Wow.
And took some soul search. I mean, that was a nice design process where it's personal and it's both of us talking about our own experience and coming to like a design solution to express it, which is some kind of therapy, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it. And if the process of creating it wasn't, then the experience of utilizing it is, right?
And sharing it publicly and having it on display in a place that gets a lot of visitors is interesting.
And that prototype never made it to mass production. I feel like you have missed your opportunity to get on Lion. What's it called? Dragon's Den.
Dragon's Den. It's not too late.
Come on.
Yeah, huge demand for that.
What dragon wouldn't want that? You go to an airport and you got to sit next to someone you don't want to sit to, or you just create your own space.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of like some of Ai Weiwei's installations that talk about the refugee experience and using common everyday things like the life jackets and repurposing them and turning it into something that has new meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a common kind of tool to use in design to rethink a product or rethink an experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of many of these competitions that exist in the design industry. That you get to see things that, they reinvented that. That's a great idea.
Exactly.
Right? But then everyone's so busy that reinvention potentially just ends up standing still after the competition, and that doesn't become something to mass market, which in many ways, probably many of these designs would provide a great solution for the general economy. But
yeah, I think that's one way to think about it is what would it be on a mass scale? And I think in my practice today, like that's a lot of what happens with the commercial interior projects where you say, okay, I'm going to take something that might be inexpensive, overlooked, and do something new with it and create a space using that. And those are often things that are very durable or, easy to replace, fix. But can give you a really unusual experience, make you rethink something.
All right, let's go back into that in another minute or two.
Yeah.
Maybe ask about an example or two, but you have time to think about it. Okay, so you had come back, you'd worked on that project, and then what did you do with overall practice? Were you working for someone else, or is this around the same time you started your studio? What did that look like?
So there were a couple of years where I was working at Raw Design.
Okay.
And I had gone in and out of working at LGA, which was transitioning at the time from Levitt Goodman Architects to LGA.
Yeah.
And so I had a foot in both spaces. Ended up doing several projects at Raw, which is mid-rise condo buildings. Before starting the practice. But I had that as a kind of goal. And when I took the job at Raw, I told myself that the only way I would ever leave this job would be to start my own practice. And I had a good experience working there. But what I found about working on the condo projects is that they are very slow. It takes years to see.
The project or?
No, the office was not slow at all. Building.
I didn't say it.
No, designing and getting, the zoning approvals for a condo building. That whole process from start to people moving in takes years and years.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was in a rush, and I wanted the satisfaction of seeing design work complete so I could, take lessons and go to the next thing.
Yeah, and I feel like if you said that you were only in Tel Aviv for a year, you didn't get to see a whole lot of what you worked on develop to the point where you could see it completed, right?
Yes and no. Because it was a small practice, the things I worked on were smaller.
Okay.
Like I had done a landscape project there for an old, a medieval, is it a nunnery monastery?
Okay.
And another exhibit installation. So those were relatively quick.
Okay.
And that was nice to see. And then jumping in scale to a condo building was really something else.
Right.
And a different way of working, where there are just so many consultants and where you have a very close relationship with the client over a very long time. So during that period, I was thinking in the background about, okay, how do I start practice and what do I want to do? And eventually I was connected with what became the first client for Kilogram proper, which started a kind of fade out. There was a few months where I was leaving my job as a project architect and starting up Kilogram.
Yeah.
And then we ended up doing many projects with Greenhouse.
Yeah, it was the moonlighting phase.
That's what it was, really. Yeah. Yeah.
You're not alone. There have been many people I've spoken to that have been a part of that moonlight.
I don't think I invented it. No.
But it's also, I from hearing it from so many people, it's also very daunting. You feel excited by the prospect of the work you're working on both sides, but you don't want one to be able to take away from the other, and you feel a responsibility to both, and your draw is leading way more towards the potential of going out on your own and being able to be the full-on decision maker for the practice. There's that,
right. It's not knowing really what you're hurtling toward, but just having the hope that is going to be, something great and energetic. And I think more than anything, it was being able to choose who I'm working with. I had an old boss who told me that the way you spend your time every day and the people you surround yourself with is what defines your life.
Yeah.
And
amen to that.
Yeah, working on these condo projects, I didn't always love the priorities and the way that things were managed, and thought that I would love to be able to decide more of that myself. I think, for a lot of architects, that dream would be, how do you build something on your own? But alas, we often need clients to build our work, and benefit a lot from working closely with clients. Like, really, the projects that I love the most that I've done are ones where the clients were really challenging the design process, where they understand kind of, this is the way we're working together, and let's push the design to be the best.
Yeah, where they don't accept the first pass of schematics, right?
Yeah, or they ask questions, understand where it's coming from, and that ultimately it's for them. So it does need to be really streamlined with what they need.
Right. So what year is it that you end up going out on your own to officially open your practice?
That was between 2015 and 2016.
Okay.
So ages ago.
Yeah. Okay. So you're currently 89 years old. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's my staple go-to dad joke. I had to just make sure I got it out. Otherwise I'd feel unfulfilled.
Make those all the time. They used to be my regular jokes. Now they're my dad jokes.
Right? Okay. So you've got out on your own, and first projects, what do they look like? Where are you what are you working at? Where are you working out of? How do you feel at the very, very early onset of this practice? 3 questions in one.
Yeah. Of course I didn't completely know what I was doing, and it's scrappy to start a business. We were doing greenhouse juice stores.
Okay.
So learning about retail design and how to work through new materials. Like, for example, the first project where we used a lot of steel, I had never really worked in detail on steel design, and just getting familiar with a new material, kind of like family from the ground up. How can I push this material? What's interesting to do? What's not going to make a contractor laugh you out of the room? And doing the same thing with a client of building a business and a brand. So what is this about is something that I think any business owner is always asking themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're not used to that question, it's intimidating. So the first couple of years they're stressful, working out of home and out of anywhere where my laptop is, and getting into the habit of what that means and how to balance my time between running a business and being an architect.
Right.
I don't think I really understood that I was running a business for several years. That came as a bit of a shock, but I was doing it and learning how to. And
how did you land a client that would have so many locations? Like, I feel like that's a rare thing to be able to start off with.
today I appreciate that what it was a kind of vein of work. It was really like tapping into something. So the founders of Greenhouse were just starting the company. They had just opened one location when we met. It was probably a month or two before they opened.
Okay.
And they were opening that directly with a builder. So it was more of a design build situation.
Yeah.
But for their next location, the very first one was at Yonge Street in Briar Hill, which we called Canopy, and was basically a space that was a laneway at some point, and was just infilled with ticky-tacky Toronto-style construction at some point, who knows when. And that's sort of what the design was all about, was thinking about that space as that leftover laneway that was filled in.
Right.
Was something really beautiful and light. And they had worked on their website with a friend's partner, and we're looking for a designer, and we were connected. And I really didn't know that it would turn into this. They knew what they were doing when it came to marketing. They had really great timing on a product entering the market, and had, the means over the years to continue being agile with their business, adapting to what was needed, and opening the right locations and making it work. So today we've done, more than 20 locations. We've done their production facility, like some work on that, their offices, and it's been amazing. I always love working with them. They are exactly the kind of client that's got a design opinion and is part of the process, it's really nice.
So they challenge you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm just linking it back. I think that's one of the beauties of this, is that when you go into practice, you go in with a completely open mind, and you have no idea where it's going to go. And so to be at a point now where you're 20 projects into it with them is a pretty special thing in a short period of time.
It was part of the decision to call it Kilogram, was to say, I don't know what this is going to become. I didn't have a clear vision of saying, oh, I'm going to be this type of architect or that type of architect. I kind of thought, maybe I'll fabricate some things one day. Maybe we'll develop a project. Maybe, who knows? And I wanted a name, like my name, that's a noun, and it could be a shell for whatever.
Yeah.
And it just, in my own mind, it doesn't put me in a corner.
Right. It's interesting. So from that point forward, you're kind of, I guess, on the map. Now you have, in some ways, going forward, a potential portfolio to share with people, and it's yours, right? And so how do you go forward from that point and start really, setting your feet and establishing yourself as a practice that's people want to come and work with? Like, what does that look like for you? How do you find additional clients beyond just the one now?
I really enjoyed working on commercial projects. Working on the greenhouse projects as a way to start the practice was a way to quickly work through many designs and test out many materials. Every project had kind of its own story and material palette, so it felt experimental.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that drew a lot of attention. So projects got pretty good coverage and brought really a handful of other commercial clients, whether it was office interiors or restaurants.
Right.
It was a kind of, and still, who we work with are often entrepreneurs, people who are trying to grow their business, who have a vision of how this one project fits into a really big story for their brand, and want to turn their brand into a space, or innovate the way that they create spaces in general, the way people interact with their product.
Yep.
So in some sense, it was natural. I'd say that the hard left turn that the practice took was, for many people, was early COVID, where we were doing a lot of very large restaurant projects, and that just died right away. So that was the moment of stepping back and saying, okay, I'm actually running a business as well as being an architect. And how do I make my practice resilient so that this doesn't happen again and still interest me? And, how do I actually reflect on what I've been doing and thinking of a vision for where it's going? That had never really happened in an organized way. that opened up a lot of opportunities afterwards, which was thinking, okay, how do I reach new types of projects? We started doing residential projects, which we had only done, we had done some of before. It got me thinking about how do I connect between architecture and real estate, which is what my partner does.
Mm-hmm.
And we were looking for kind of opportunities there. So it just started a lot of conversations. And I feel like today Kilogram is more resilient. It has experience doing, different kinds of projects. And I hope to keep widening that.
I like that you use the word "it" to describe the practice.
It.
Yeah.
As opposed to they.
Or us. I don't know. Yeah.
Us. Yeah.
And so like, what does that look like? Because if you're shifting away from working in commercial space and then acquiring residential projects, how do you acquire that? Or is this through word of mouth or friends and family, or how do you start to develop that portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, I think word of mouth was the kind of first project. Like, we were doing some of it before the pandemic. It's not like it was out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So there was something to fall back on. And I'd say the first project that felt like, okay, this is substantial and we got a lot of attention for was a house in Parkdale where we did a rear addition that was kind of bright red. And I think that it has a very different language working in residential projects. In some ways, they're more dynamic spaces.
Mm-hmm.
They change throughout the day. They change the way people use a room. A bedroom is not only for sleeping. And commercial projects are different in that they try to deliver a very similar experience to everyone who walks in. And they have pretty clearly stated goals. I want to be able to sell more of something or create this kind of experience. And then we develop what that experience is in a home that is looser. So it's a bit of a kind of infrastructure for someone's life. And I think we were able to bring some commercial kind of tools into the mix. And that means choosing material palettes that are different, making clients feel a little bit uncomfortable at first in those discussions of saying, how can we push how you have used your dining room for the past 20 years may not be the best way or the only way. And let's rethink things. Right. So it takes a little more education. It's a little more personal. Everybody's definition of family is different. Yeah. And you get to know what that means.
Yeah, and you also, in a completely different way, you get decisions made in a different way. That those between a residential space, I feel like people are far more. They can be much further on the fence about finalizing a decision in some ways than a commercial space.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so size of studio. How many people work at the studio?
At our largest, we were 5.
Yeah. We
are now 2.5.
Okay.
It's small.
Upper torso or lower torso, or is that person split directly in half?
Right down the middle. Through the belly button.
Did you keep the dominant hand?
Yeah. We got the left hand.
Oh, the more creative side.
Yeah. In some sense it was, part of that was the pandemic, and part of that afterwards was a kind of decision of saying, if I'm running this with the business lens, in many ways, it's really nice to keep things small and have like a direct connection to my projects to earn more and to outsource what I need. So that's actually worked quite well. We've tried to focus on the design and the architecture.
Yeah.
And that means that we can do that more efficiently.
Right. Yeah. Right sizing, right, is really what it is understanding the market that the portion of the market that you fit into and how you want the business to run as effectively as it can.
So, and understanding your own skill set.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily have to do everything. I feel like so many architecture practices I've worked in do their own marketing, and it'll shock you that architects are not always the best people at explaining their own work or getting it out there. So it's okay to ask for help.
Again, spoken to many people. I will continue to. Not many have said this, what you just stated. It's interesting. I think that there are a good number of studios that will go out there and they'll apply for a lot of awards on their work, but it's not the same as marketing to a larger community of people. Okay, so understand, scale practice, understand different types of projects that you look at, your origin story, understand all of that. So now, what about some of the things that you're doing beyond the practice? So involvement within the community in some way. So what does that look like for you?
It's many different pots,
Okay.
and it changes all the time. So I'll say like one that started early was exactly the same time I was starting my practice.
Yeah.
I joined a LGBT water polo team.
Oh.
And I'm bringing it up because I had never played a team sport or any sport with a ball in it, which really scared me. But that space made it like very welcoming.
Yeah.
And I really loved it. Travel to tournaments. It was so much
Traveling
fun.
where? Like locally, or you're traveling abroad?
Like right before the pandemic, we went to Melbourne for a tournament. And I went to Edmonton. That was there's an international aquatics tournament, LGBT aquatics tournament that happens every year.
In the same place, or is it in different places?
Different place. So right now it's just wrapping up in Buenos Aires. So like right
Why
now.
weren't you there?
Well, I became a parent a year ago, and doing 2 practices a week at 9 p.m. became a bit of an issue. So that's on the back burner.
The reality of dadism.
Yeah, exactly. Would love to go back one day.
Yep.
But I guess I'm saying it because it's, when you are an employee in a practice, that's kind of one box that you get your self-worth from. And when you have your own practice, kind of feels like every client and every project is a new relationship. It's a new thing to test. And over the years, the practice is just trying more and more things. And water polo is like, okay, I was on the board there. That was my first time being on an executive board of something. That's a team of almost 200 people. So there's a fair bit of organizing to do.
Is that 200 people locally or abroad?
No, that team is just Toronto.
Wow.
So we're probably the biggest, I think, in the world of LGBT water polo teams. A niche, very niche world.
I thought you were talking about being on the board of the team.
Of the team, yes.
There were 200 members on the team, not 200 members on the board.
On the team, not the board.
Got it. Thank you. Clarification complete.
Yeah. But just to say that in my daily life, I was, working in our converted garage office.
Yep.
In a small business that, we were inventing every day. And it was really nice to be part of something big outside of that.
Yes, I could agree.
Yeah. So it's good to always balance that. And I think that was sort of the taste. So the year that Toronto Society of Architects started their Pride initiatives, I knew, okay, I should join that. And that was a lot of fun being on that committee, organizing panel discussions, doing what's essentially advocacy for something that wasn't really present, thinking about what queer designers are doing in Canada. Do we have a legacy of that? What does it mean to have queer spaces? Those are kind of like the topics that were coming up. And celebrating that in the Pride Parade, which is always fun.
I have to tell you on this topic, one of the greatest stories I've heard so far on this specific topic was Michael Taylor designed the nightclub Lube.
Have not been there. Okay,
well, no problem. But he designed it. And I heard this story from David Hine, who's a code consultant, and how he had gone, you're talking about legacy, he had gone there to like celebrate the opening of this project he was a part of, and Michael's like, it was a pleasure, and like he had to leave, and Dave was just like left there. He's like, oh, okay, I guess party time.
Yeah, of course.
and the the legacy of it apparently is an amazing student, an amazing place. So I don't know. I felt like sharing the story because it was just one of those stories that came as a result of that.
Well, yeah, no,
create a sense of community.
Important because there's not a lot of queer spaces, and the definition of that has changed over my lifetime as an adult for sure. So, I mean, yeah, it's good to reflect on and to protect what needs protecting and to kind of give it space. So the Toronto Society of Architects has been very good at celebrating that, and they're working on a big archive, I believe, or kind of documenting projects and spaces. And then today, actually, I'm co-leading the forums initiative at Toronto Society of Architects. So It's several kind of panel discussions throughout the year. We've got one coming up in January that's done together with Design TO, and it's all about labor practices in architecture. It's a good time to talk about it because since the economic downturn in Canada after COVID, like that's been slow and changing, and it's having effects on architecture practices. So we're going to have offices that have unionized employees. An office in Ontario, that's the first cooperative. We have an office in the UK that's employee owned. And I know that you interviewed someone from Blackwell Bowick about something like that. So
Brooke.
Right. So it's something that's relevant. And I think that especially when it comes to like the legacy of offices, succession planning, it's something that a lot of offices don't really face.
Yes.
And need
don't
to consider.
Don't want to face.
Why would you want to? It's uncomfortable.
I mean, why would you want to? You want to because like you have to. I mean, I say this because my mind is there and has been for a long time, but you have to accept phases of life. Like you just have to. There is no denying that there are phases of life. And when you look at the concept of succession planning, like that is a phase of life. And it's not to say it's the bad phase. It might be a different phase, but it's a phase and it's there and it's not going anywhere. And so deal with it. The same way that you've dealt with everything else that you had to deal with for your practice.
It's inevitable. And in all the conversations we had with practices, the succession planning always came up as the kind of nucleus. Like it was the reason the conversation started.
Right.
I think, it's kind of like if you think about it as phases, it's maybe something I have to deal with later. And the truth is that it has a lot to do with how you do things right now. And that succession planning, if it's planned, might change the way your business runs today and how you interact with your colleagues. So I think that's difficult. It's breaking habit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to distill it down to something potentially a little more simple than that. And that is like, if you're going to go out there and you're going to have kids, there's a good chance you're probably going to want to have an insurance policy. And the likening to that is, well, if you're going to go start a practice and you've got all these people responsible for it, if you don't have a plan in place for what happens if you're not there anymore and you're leaving the kids without anything.
100%.
So, yeah, I've had that conversation with some people and there's going to be continued conversations about that. It's interesting. You know what? Maybe as I say this, and we've talked about the idea of doing something maybe on a forum with TSA, maybe there's a conversation about succession planning.
Yeah, I think it's a good time to talk about it. And Toronto has grown up a lot. Like I grew up in the suburbs here in North York, and I think it's the city that always feels to me like it was never meant to be cosmopolitan the way that it is. It was always going to be Montreal, and we somehow ended up that city. And there's growing pains, and it feels like this kind of like teenage period now.
We've got the angst.
That's how I feel about it. Yeah, it's kind of like it's lanky. It's got some appendages that are a little too tall, and some that don't feel right, and its zoning's not quite harmonized, and that's okay.
What a great way to describe it. The city is lanky. Yes.
Yeah, it's got maybe one extra subway line that's not quite being used. So yeah, it's the same for architecture practices. Yeah. There used to be just, like a handful of larger legacy practices. Yeah. And today there's such a rich group of kind of small practices doing something new and different in the city. And what's that going to look like in 20 years? Like, that's the conversation to have.
Mm-hmm. I'm pausing because I'm absorbing that. What's that going to look like? Yeah, do you have the answer? Because I don't think I do. It's a good, yeah.
I think we throw everything at the wall and we try all the things we do. We want to have a vision of something really optimistic. The
question that I have is, what's being thrown at the wall? Is it one of those like sticky hands that like everything sticks, or is it pasta?
I think what the practice is, like what the discussion will be about at this forum in January, I think a lot of it is about what are some of the regulatory hoops to jump through, which no one really wants to talk about because it's dry and complex, and the legal implications. And like, that's the reality when you're running a practice, and a lot of what you do is administrative.
Yep.
And that's okay. That's what's needed. But then there are also the in-depth conversations, and that's what's really interesting.
So where do you see yourself, sole principal of Kilogram, involved in a few of these different little boards here and there?
Mm-hmm.
You've either participated in and moved away from, or you continue to, or something else that you might pick up in the future. Where do you see yourself going with your practices? Do you feel like you've hit your mark right now and you want to keep running with this, or is there something different that you've envisioned for it?
Actually, I'll talk about the past for a second.
Sure.
I grew up in a family where everyone started a business.
Yeah.
And starting a business was something that I thought was inevitable. I didn't really consider an alternative. So what that means is that a lot of the conversations were always like dinner table conversations, or even me spending time with my brothers today are the conversations about like, what if this, what if that? And that's that feeling of everyday reinventing. It's like, okay, now what is the business? Now what is the business? So that's kind of like one bucket. I think that that's a good practice to have. What's recent? So in the last several months, I've been involved with rehousing. Rehousing is a project that was started with U of T, Tough Labs, and LGA. So I had taught with Michael Piper at U of T in the past, so I knew him, who was involved. And I had worked at LGA with Jana Levitt. And the two of them started this project, which is funded by the Neptis Foundation. So what we're looking at is small apartment buildings. How do we make small apartment buildings easier for a citizen developer is kind of the term we're using. But the idea is that not necessarily the largest developers in Canada taking on smaller properties across the city and being able to construct buildings that may be up to 6 stories, up to 30 units. I know actually it's on the way to allowing up to 60, but how do you systematize it? And it's a research project that checks what does the zoning policy actually do. So I grew up in North York. It took 30 minutes to walk to get some milk. You had to drive everywhere. And that's a zoning issue. That's how the city wanted that neighborhood to look and feel, which is one family per house with a driveway. And today I live in a place where, there's like a 200-meter radius that serves everything I need in my life. And I know like a third of my neighbors. Like you were saying, it sounds like your neighborhood is like that too.
Yeah.
I much prefer that. It's so much more social. Yeah. I spend less time in a car. It's less carbon intensive. We cover less of the earth with hard surface.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. It's a good way to live. It could be much denser and still really wonderful. And towers are not the only answer.
Yeah.
And I have experience working on those, and that was my feeling when I worked on them. So this is the project that looks at it at a really high level. Mm-hmm. We're not designing individual buildings per se. We're looking at the zoning and saying, what kinds of neighborhoods can this make? And how can the lots be used to make really wonderful projects? And I hope that will help clear the path for future designers and developers to create really great spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's something that's new for Kilogram to be involved in and to partner on. And I'd love to see where it goes. I'd love to find out.
Well, time will answer that one.
Yeah. At the moment, it feels to me like in one part of my day, I'm working on very small details, really like how two pieces of material come together in a commercial space and the ergonomics of it and how do people feel and their senses. And then in the next moment, I'm talking about this very large system of design for creating large buildings. Mm-hmm. And that's really nice. It's part of the reason I wanted to be an architect was the variation from day to day. Yeah. It's so nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a diversified way of being able to look at your day and what you're going to accomplish with it. Right. You can do the macro and the micro at the same time. And it also just, for your mind, what it can do for your mind to be able to pull you out of something that you could be racking your brain upon to going and trying to solve a bigger problem or a smaller problem in the opposite way. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Okay, and what does life look like beyond work?
Well, we adopted our son a year ago.
Yeah.
So he moved in, almost exactly a year ago. And that was a 6-year long process until we became parents from the time we kind of started in earnest.
Yeah.
Turns out it's not that easy for same-sex couples to have kids.
Huh.
And I feel like I could write a book about it. We went down every path almost. We really tried all of it. Speaking of throwing things at the wall, we threw all of it. And then we got a call so I was on a site survey and got a call while I was in my client's bedroom asking if we would provide respite care, which means temporary housing, essentially, similar to foster care for a 1-year-old boy for 3 weeks. And we needed a few days to think about it, but we really only had 7 days till he would move in, and he did. And we did that. It was, really a crazy time. It was a lot of fun and very intense to become a parent overnight. And then he went back to his foster family, and we did what we could to start an adoption process, which worked out amazingly. That it felt very lucky. And he's great. And now my days look very different. They're
no more water polo.
No more water polo. A lot of things got cut out, but like I said, we had a lot of runway, so none of that came as a surprise. I wasn't dealing with the adjustment in that way.
Yeah.
I was totally happy to. And honestly, if I wasn't in practice on my own, I don't know how it would have happened, especially that kind of overnight condition for our social worker to find someone to bring a child to just like that. I was so happy that the two of us are self-employed and we were able to do that. So it's been great. Being a parent it's like all the cliches. I hear myself talk about it and it's like, oh, that's so cliche. And it's just that now I understand it.
But don't you find that the cliches are okay?
That's just what it is.
Yeah.
They are all true, all of them.
Yeah.
They grow up so fast, blah, blah.
But it's joyous.
It's full of joy.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, does it happen fast. Oh, it happens so fast. And have you been able to go away on any trips yet as a family? Have you traveled?
Kids are free to fly until they're 2. We did a lot of traveling. Yeah.
I knew the second you said that, which is why I responded the way I did.
I mean,
where have you gone?
You should know that my partner is always reading about airplanes, airplane reviews, air crashes, all of it. So we had to fly with him, and he's a great flyer. We went to Victoria, which is where the in-laws live and where life is beautiful. We went to Greece to meet up with a brother from Israel. Yeah. And we went to Italy to meet up with my entire family. So 18 of us together for a week, which was amazing.
Wow.
We went to Palm Springs and met my cousin there who lives in LA. Yeah. And loved Palm Springs. What a wonderful place. It's been a lot.
That's a good amount of travel.
Yeah, no, in 1 year that was a lot.
That's over a month worth of travel. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. I had so much fun.
Well, and you begin in that role, and you realize how encompassing that role becomes. And you said, when we started this discussion, I said I'm going to leave my phone on vibrate, and anyone that's been with me knows that I'll do that only because if you have children, there's a chance you could get a phone call that something could go wrong. And you're just I've received that phone call from daycare.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And anyone that's a parent has probably received that phone call, which is why, they've got to stay on vibrate.
Yeah. I mean, it changes your priorities, of course. Completely. That's one of the cliches.
Yeah. Kfir, thank you so much for joining me and for being as open and candid as you have been. I feel like I say this all the time, but it's true. I mean, when what I do in a short period of time, I get to know people in whatever capacity they're willing to share. And you have shared so much about what your life has been. And I think that anyone that's listening to this will probably feel like if they ever meet you in an event that they're going to know a lot about you. And that's a beautiful thing because that was the intended purpose of this. So
for sure. And they should definitely come and say hi. I would love to talk to them.
I'm going to say it again. We at Walden, we build for our partners. And one of the main purposes of wanting to do this was to be able to build relationships with people. and to be able to have people go on and tell their story and talk about, the architecture of their life. And everyone's got a different story. Everyone's got different experiences. And I really appreciate all that you've shared with me about yours, because although I have not gone and got a master's in architecture, nor have I gone to architecture school, I feel like I've come to know a lot about the trials and tribulations of what it can be to be a person that goes and experiences this through these many stories. So thank you. If you're listening to this, I do want to remind you, please check out our Behind the Building Instagram. It'll be an opportunity for you to be able to see the work that Kfir wants to highlight. It will be an opportunity for you to be able to see a lot of the work that's been shared so far. If you're listening to this on whatever platform it is, whether it's Apple or Spotify, 5 stars helps. It gets some visibility into the general public for this podcast, and that would be the ambition. So again, thank you so much for the time. Very appreciative of it.
Thanks so much for having me.